Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Ellen Wasfie of the League of Women Voters of Kent County. On behalf of the League, the American Association of University Women Dover Branch, and Modern Maturity Center, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to Candidates Night for the 2015 Dover Mayoral and City Council election. Tonight's program will afford us the opportunity to hear a discussion of issues and opinions that will enable us to make more informed choices on Election Day, April 21st. This evening, candidates for Mayor of Dover and City Council seats representing the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th districts have been invited to participate in a debate. But before beginning a discussion of the issues, I must reiterate a point already made to the candidates and stated in the printed program. The League of Women Voters is required to abide by regulations set forth by the Federal Elections Commission, the Federal Communications Commission, and the Internal Revenue Service. These regulations are intended to ensure nonpartisanship by groups sponsoring appearances of candidates running for public office. Consequently, should only one candidate for a particular office be present, even if that candidate is running unopposed, we cannot provide the opportunity for him or her to address the audience as part of the formal program. There must always be at least 2 points of view represented for each office. This evening, candidate Brian E. Lewis, running unopposed for the 2nd District Council seat, is directly affected by these federal regulations. Mr. Lewis is with us this evening. Where are you, Mr. Lewis? Even though he cannot participate in the formal program. And campaign literature for all the candidates is available at the rear of the auditorium. Now, let us turn to the format of this evening's debate. All candidates will have 3 minutes for their introductory statements outlining issues of particular importance to their campaigns. League of Women Voters, Kent County President Dr. Phyllis Enematsu and Carolyn Brinkley will act as timekeepers. They will notify the candidates when they have 15 seconds. We're not giving them 15 minutes. And when their time is up. In fairness to all the candidates, we request that they each observe these time limits. The initial speaking order for each office was determined beforehand through the method of random choice by the League of Women Voters Candidates Night Committee. Following the initial presentations, all candidates will have the opportunity to respond to questions posed by the audience. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question and 1 minute for rebuttal if desired. Each candidate, however, is limited to 1 rebuttal per question. Members of the audience have been given index cards at the entry door on which to write their questions. Volunteers from the League of Women Voters and the American Association of University Women will collect these cards as they are held up in the air. If you require additional index cards, please raise your hand and a monitor will bring them to you. Questions should be addressed to a particular office, but all candidates will have the chance to respond to each question. We will do our best to address as many of your concerns as possible, but please make the effort to write your questions legibly. If we can't read them, we can't ask them. One final word regarding tonight's presentation. It would have been impossible to organize such an event without the conscientious efforts of civic-minded citizens who spend countless hours planning and attending to details. Our thanks go to the League of Women Voters Candidates Night Committee, Mary Kay Eggers, who contacted the candidates directly, Joan Brookelman, who drafted the letters of invitation to all the candidates, Fred Brookelman, who formatted and published the printed programs and produced the candidate name tents, and Jean Bauer, who is assisting the moderator this evening. We would also like to express our appreciation to volunteers from the League and AAUW for staffing tonight's forum, and to Mark Fels of Actors Attic for providing the sound system. We are fortunate this year to be able to stream this debate live to the City of Dover website. This service is being offered by the City of Dover as a public service via Catch It Live, an independently owned production studio which is not affiliated with nor endorses any candidates in this election. Our gratitude also goes to Carolyn Fredericks, Executive Director of Modern Maturity Center, for graciously donating this venue, and to her Administrative Assistant, Kathy Becker, and the Modern Maturity Center staff for creating these hospitable surroundings. And now, let me introduce the candidates, beginning with the candidates for mayor. We will begin with your 3-minute statement. Our first candidate for mayor, Mr. George J. Gaudioso. Mr. Gaudioso.
Do I start?
Yes, go right ahead.
Here we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, I'm a candidate for mayor. My name is George Gaudioso. I'm 72. I am married to my wife, Catherine, for 47 years. We have 2 daughters and 5 very active grandchildren. I hold a bachelor's degree from what is today Rowan University. While there, I was inducted into Pi Gamma Mu, which is a National Honor Society for the Social Sciences, something I've always been very proud of, and I've continued to hold an interest in that throughout my life. Upon graduating, I was certified in both elementary education and secondary science, social sciences. I also hold an MBA from William Patterson University. I taught in the public school system for 38 years. As we approached retirement, my wife and I went out along the East Coast of the United States to find a place where we could retire to. And we finally ended up settling here in Dover. We settled here primarily because of the proximity to our daughters and grandchildren, and for some other factors too. The stability of the economy here, the relatively favorable tax situation, and the one thing that we both, even today, talk to our friends about is the really special atmosphere that Dover has. It's a very warm feeling, and I hope that will continue. I have personal interest. I am a big sports fan, both at college and amateur. I am an avid reader, novels. I read newspapers from all over the world. The reason I became a candidate was I became aware of the City Council having options, 3 options, that they were considering for restructuring the city government. I took the time to look into them, and I felt that the City Council was ceding too much authority to the mayor under those 3 options. I decided to become a candidate with the sole purpose of fostering some discussion on possible alternatives. I am a big advocate of what has become known as option D, which is a 4th option. It does provide for a full-time mayor. It also would require very few amendments to the city charter. And the thing I like the most is the fact that the City Council maintains its authority and oversight of the city. I was going to say something else, but I can't do it at this point. The big issues involved in this city are basically, as far as I see it, financial. It's one word. How are you going to pay for it? Financial.
Thank you, Mr. Gaudioso. Mayor Christensen, our second candidate is the Honorable Robin R. Christensen, Mayor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to see all of you here today, and I'm glad that we've had the opportunity to share with you, all of us that are gathered here tonight, both citizens and candidates, the issues and the concerns that you have in the upcoming election. I'd like to thank everyone here for allowing me over these last 9 months to be able to do what I think is one of the best jobs in the city, and that's being mayor of the city of Dover. Not that I've done the best job, but it is one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. I couldn't do it without the support of my wife, Cindy, for 40 years, my son, Sean, my daughter, Shannon, Alexis, Katie, and Madison, and my grandchildren, Troy, Chase, Cooper, Audrey, and Olivia. We have over these last 9 months, as a team, partnered with the city employees and the city staff, and have achieved many great things, one of those being the downtown development designation that was given to us by Governor Markell. Over the last 9 months, I've had the opportunity to work very closely with Senator Carper, Senator Coons, and Representative Carney, and renewed a relationship with President Brooks Bana, Commissioner Angel, Commissioner Pepper, and others from the Kent County Levy Court. With these new partnerships, along with business people, realtors, entrepreneurs, and citizens, we have been able to revitalize a vision of where the city of Dover needs to go. With this downtown development designation, we can realize the dream of Mayor Jack Richter of 25 years ago, who believed that a healthy heart, a healthy downtown will lead to a healthy city. Finally, tonight, I hope to answer your questions about where you want our city to go and how we can improve our city, both safety-wise, financial-wise, and the quality of life-wise, so we can continue to make Dover a place that we all want to call home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. We will now turn to our candidates for City Council, and we will begin with the 1st District. Our first candidate for the 1st District City Council is Mr. James E. Hosfeld, Jr.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jim Hosfeld, and I'm running for City Council in the 1st District. Let me begin by thanking the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. We appreciate it. A little bit about myself and my family. Our story started back in 1980. I arrived here with Dover Air Force Base. I was stationed here through 1985. Traveled around a little bit, was stationed in Korea, and then eventually in South Dakota. At that point, my wife and myself, we made a decision that we were going to leave the Air Force. Then we had to make a decision where we were going to live. At that time, we decided we wanted to come back to Dover, Delaware, and this is where we wanted to live. We wanted to raise our family here. We just liked the feel of it. We still do to this day, and we still, for the last 26 years, have resided in the 1st District. As a police officer, I have worked in every unit within the department. I was in 2014, I retired as the chief of police. Prior to that, I held various positions throughout the department, as I said, with the patrol unit, drug unit, special investigations unit. I was actually the president of the local FOP for 4 years. So I have a varied experience. As the police chief for 4 years, I had the opportunity to manage and oversee a $13 million budget. During some of the worst economic times we have seen as a city, we had increased scrutiny and pressure on the budget. We were understaffed. We had to continue to find ways to look out for public safety, to increase our public safety, and to take care of the citizens of Dover. I'm proud to say, with the help of the men and women of the Dover Police Department, we were able to do that. If you look at the annual reports over those 4 years, you can see a steady increase in violent crime, a steady decrease, I should say, in violent crime, robberies, burglaries. So again, that goes back to the good work of the men and women of the Dover Police Department. Currently, I work for Dover International Speedway. I'm the security manager. I oversee the events, NASCAR races, Firefly, Big Barrel music festivals, and Punkin' Chunkin' if it does come in November, as they state. The city of Dover, to me, is a very special place. It's something I take great pride in. I have always felt that you should live where you police. That was something that was very near and dear to me. And I want to use this opportunity now that I'm retired to simply give back to the city. You know, the city gave me a chance to do what I always wanted to do. It was my childhood dream to become a police officer. And the city gave me that opportunity. So I just see this as a great opportunity for me to simply give back to the city and to the residents of the 1st District. I want to see the city of Dover prosper. I want to see businesses flourish. And I want to see job growth for those members of our community. So again, thank you everybody for coming out tonight and being part of this event. I certainly appreciate it and look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Our second candidate for the 1st District City Council is the Honorable Beverly C. Williams.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Williams.
Hi, my name is Bev Williams. I have been living in Dover since 1971, and I would like to thank the League of Women Voters and the AAUW, of which I'm a member, for sponsoring this, because this is the only forum that I know of during the election where you get the opportunity to ask us questions and to get some information directly from us. And for that reason, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background, but I'm also going to spend some time on what I think is important for the city of Dover. I came here, like I said, in 1971 with my husband and my oldest son, Sean. My son, Chris, was born here. I now have two grandchildren, Riley and Cody, 13 and 14 respectively, my sons still live in Dover. I live in Dover, of course. I'm the executive director of Aid in Dover, which runs the 801 shelter, which many of you may be familiar with. It's been in operation since 1975, dealing with runaway, homeless, abused, neglected, and dependent kids. I was elected to council in 2002, and during my time on council, I've been council president for 6 years. I was mayor for a very short period of time when the mayor resigned until the next mayor could be elected. I'm the current chair of the Utility Committee. I'm the liaison to Kent County, one of the council liaisons to Kent County, and sit on the Council President's Commission to evaluate the city buildings for future use. My greatest concerns for Dover are threefold. First, as many of you are, I am also concerned about our security. I'm concerned about our safety. I think that's why cities get together in the first place, and that's why I voted for the 10 more officers for the Dover City Police. This will enable community policing, and community policing is extremely important to the city of Dover. I was for 23 years a commissioner at the Dover Housing Authority, and when we had community policing at Manchester Square, we had less crime than we ever had after it was pulled. So that's a major concern of mine. The other concern I have is, of course, financial. I'm not, as most of you may know, I'm a fiscal conservative. I do not believe in raising taxes every time it's important to get money. We have to find new revenue streams. And finally, our infrastructure, our water, our streets. We've got to keep them clean. We've got to keep them in good repair. Thank you for coming tonight, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. Our next candidates are for the 3rd District. You will notice in your program that the 3rd District has two separate candidates. One says vacant. That's the seat that was occupied by, at that time, Councilman Sean Lynn, who ran for state legislature. Now, this seat is to finish his term, which will end in May of 2017. The other 3rd District seat is just an expiring seat of Councilman Bonar, and that will expire in May of 2019. So that's just for your clarification. So turning now to our first 3rd District candidates, we'll begin with Mr. Fred A. Neal.
Thank you very much. When I was a teenager, my father called me in for the talk, not the one you're thinking about. He said, son, you're going to find that this world is filled with a lot of stinkers. You're here, and you have a choice. You can either be one or make life better for your fellow man. After 2 years in the Army and graduating from the University of Maryland, I spent a decade, more than a decade, as a newsman and a news reporter and a news director in Baltimore. I honed my investigative skills and increased my olfactory sensitivity to things that smell bad in issues and events. As press officer for Mayor William Donald Schaefer during the renaissance of the Baltimore Inner Harbor, I watched the inside workings of how you get things done. Now, that doesn't mean that I can develop a world-class marina in Silver Lake. Don't look for that. As a media director for the Laurel Race Course, Charlestown and Shenandoah Downs. I learned about racing and about the gambling industry. And the Laurel International was a major sports event and a big stage. I was there as I was when I produced the Baltimore Colt football games and did series of shows with John Unitas, Art Donovan, and Brooks Robinson, all Hall of Famers. As general manager of the Baltimore Banners of World Team Tennis, I was responsible for pulling together a major league franchise in a brand new league. I also learned failure. I was Jimmy Connor's boss, but if you didn't love the sport, there's no way in the world you can make money from it, and that's what they were looking to do. As public affairs officer of the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation in Baltimore, I help talented people with disabilities to enter the real work world. There's a similarity with people with disabilities and seniors, and we all can contribute to society. My record shows leadership. I was president of 3 news organizations, 2 vocational rehabilitation associations, 1 theater group, and for the past 10 years with my own homeowners association. Since 2004, I served as volunteer public affairs officer for the Delaware Manufactured Homeowners Association, seeking to level the ground between the landlords and residents in leased land communities. DEMOA's efforts have resulted in laws being available to keeping homes affordable for a lot of vulnerable people who need affordable housing that is not taxpayer supported. I served as chair of the Kent County Redistricting Committee in 2012. I've earned the respect of people who have seen me in action, who you have elected to state, county, and city office. I will bring the same attitude of communication skill to the City Council as I seek to continue the positive growth while protecting the quality of life in Dover. I am running because of the direction my father pointed me to when I was a teenager, long time ago. I congratulate you. It's great to have a timekeeper who has a doctorate.
Thank you, Mr. Neal, for that recognition. We will turn now to our second candidate for 3rd District, and that's Mr. Chevis R. Anderson.
City of Dover. When you love something, you do whatever is needed to make sure it will always be there. Good evening. My name is Chevis Anderson, and I'm in love with the 3rd District in the City of Dover. I'm here to introduce myself to some and reintroduce myself to others. As your candidate for the 3rd District Council, a seat left vacant by Sean Lynn, who's joined the General Assembly. I am currently a resident in the Town Point White Oak area, where I hail from West Philadelphia. I came to Dover in the year 2000 on a music scholarship to Delaware State University, where I obtained my degree in music business, and my current profession is financial, business development, and professional arts management. I recently left the banking world to pursue more time for my city and my family. With 10 years in banking experience with the National Banking Association and 10 years in arts management experience for my own company, Neural Entertainment, I am asking you to elect me as your councilman so that we can address the major concerns of the 3rd District, which in my 1 year of experience and research by me running for mayor last year, I've concluded that the major issue is a higher and better quality life for our residents. With that one fact, I will break it down to you. You see, we can't just talk about more policing if we don't get the problem at the actual root. It's the actual community that we need to worry about trying to develop. We can't just say, yeah, let's say you put a Band-Aid on the problem. We have to fix the actual sore. We can't just talk about new revenue resources for the city if we aren't explaining the benefits to our residents and how it may be impacted to them during those revenue generation process. We can't just talk about our downtown project without talking about our growing homelessness problems and programs that actually help aid them to do more about that. With our district, we must stick together. We must make sure we are heard and understood. I want to see a better, healthier choices in the 3rd District. I want to see more after-school programs, more weekend programs, and more actual programs for not only our children, but our senior citizens and our middle residents. And that's where my middle class is. I'm that, what they call millennial, the age of 25 to 30, about 42. And I see that I want to put a big increase into internships, volunteer programs, as well as to assist with job experiences, as well as life experiences that are needed. And I want to do more for our senior residents. And when I say senior, I mean anyone who is a day older than me. I want you to allow me to get your dedicated response and your vote to make sure that we are 3rd District, and we are here to make sure your needs are met, and I fight for your wants. 3rd District, vote for Chevis Anderson on the 21st. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Moving along to our other 3rd District Council seat, our first candidate is Scott W. Cole. Mr. Cole.
Hello. I'd just like to introduce myself. I've been walking around the district, Town Point, and some of the other developments, Bay Tree and things like that, and it's nice to get to know people and get to see people face to face. I've been lucky enough to meet a very beautiful woman from Dover High grad, 1990. I'm from Smyrna myself. We're both educators, and we decided to make Dover our home. We're raising 2 beautiful children, 8-year-old Paisley and a 4-year-old Tanner. I'm sure they're watching at home right now, so just like to say hi. And the best part about it is that we love where we live. This is our home. We're going to make it our home, and we're going to stay here. So one of the things that I was looking at doing was I wanted to get more involved. I wanted to have a voice. I wanted to hear the voices of the 3rd District. In fact, can I get a show of hands who's from the 3rd District right now tonight? I want to thank you for coming out. If I have met you, that's great. If I haven't, I'm still walking around, still making phone calls. And if you have any questions for me tonight that I don't answer, please come up to me afterwards, and I'll try to answer any questions that you may have. A little bit about myself, a little bit more, I guess. I work for Delaware State Education Association. We advocate for 12,000 custodians, paras, teachers in many different avenues. We work with the legislators. We work with districts, with contracts, with classroom conditions, with trying to make education the highest quality in all the school districts for the children, K through 12, and even within some of the higher grades. Why am I running? As I've been more involved, as I've gotten more involved, and I've walked the neighborhoods and talked to the people on the phones and gotten to meet people in person, I just feel there's a lack of confidence, I guess, in the direction the city is going. We kind of get off track. We get on these hot button issues, the mayor issue, things like that. For the most part, everybody I talk to, neighborhood safety, they want their streets drivable, they want their streets clean, they want their trash picked up. The mayor thing, yes, that takes care of. That's a inside kind of thing, and that's what you need to have the city to run. But at the same time, people want their daily lives. They want the services that they deserve, and they want the services that they feel that they need. People have lost confidence in the value of their tax dollar and where it's going and what it's being used for. I feel like as my job as an advocate of what I'm doing right now, I am very open, I'm very honest, I'm very approachable. I get back to all of the people that I represent, which are in the thousands, and I feel like that I would bring that quality to this job as well. 15 seconds. I also am I am, again, very approachable, and I feel like I have a vision, but my vision is talking to you and finding your vision and then getting that into legislation.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Our second candidate for 3rd District, or actually our 4th candidate for 3rd District, is the Honorable David L. Bonar. Mr. Bonar.
Thank you, Ellen, and welcome to all of you tonight who took time out of your busy schedules to come out and meet with us. My name is Dave Bonar. I have lived in the city of Dover since the early 1960s, came here in the Air Force. I live on State Street, which is, as you all know, a main thoroughfare through our city. I've served on city council twice now. First time was in the 80s, and I decided to run 5 years ago, and I've been on council ever since. And during the period of time that I've been on council this time around, I had to fill a short period in which we had no mayor, so I had to be acting mayor or interim mayor during that period of time. What I've learned, I think, in being in the city of Dover is that we are at a real crossroads. We've seen a significant change in our population. Our population, when I first came here, was somewhere around 12,000 people. We're up to about 38,000 people now. I've watched over the last 5 years as we have forged partnerships with the Kent County Levy Court, with the State of Delaware legislative contingent working at Legislative Hall in Dover, and with our congressional delegation to bring some things to Dover that had not been brought here before. Wesley College is now a walkable campus thanks to some grants that we were able to obtain or helped obtain. There's a new school of nursing that's down on Queen Street that was able to be obtained through the work with our congressional delegation. We have 10 new police officers that have been approved by City Council. 5 of them are in the academy and about ready to graduate. We will need to put 5 more in the academy come spring, and we will have to find the funding to pay for that. In addition to all of this, we have a large contingent of senior citizens, and you're all concerned about your quality of life. That's one of the reasons that I voted to support more police officers in our city. I think that's very important. We have been fortunate to this point in time that we've had one of the best response times and one of the best solvability rates of anywhere in the country. We have a certified police department. We have the best volunteer fire service that you can possibly have in a state capital. We are the only state capital that still has a volunteer fire service. If we had to pay for that fire department, we would be facing about $15 million. 3 things we need to focus on. We need to focus on security and public safety. We need to focus on economic development, and we need to focus on your well-being.
Thank you, Councilman Bonar. Moving now to the 4th District. Our first candidate for the 4th District Council seat is Roy Sudler, Jr.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Roy Sudler, Jr., and I'm running for the 4th District City Councilman because I know I have the experience, insight, voice, and commitment it takes to provide remedies for addressing the social problems that not only plague the 4th District, but impedes upon the economic, demographic, and social growth of this great city of Dover. Ladies and gentlemen, my experience and insight has provided me with a unique opportunity to serve on various government committees, such as the Legislative, Finance, and Administration Committee, where only 2 non-council persons serve, representing the citizens of Dover. As a member of the committee, I have proposed option A, titled Strong Mayor Council form of government system, where we, the people, have more input on how our government functions and who will be accountable for addressing our concerns. As a current Delaware State Human Relations Commissioner, Social Action Committee Chair of Mount Zion AME Church, City of Dover's Policy Title V Prevention Committee member for at-risk youth, and NCAL's steering committee member for revitalizing downtown Dover, as well as former Dover Human Relations Commission chairman. I have established close relationships with local and state officials that can not only help increase the quality of life in the 4th District, but provide housing and development funds for ensuring a safe and secure 4th District. My goal for the 4th District consists of 1, ensuring that funds currently available through the Delaware Housing Coalition for foreclosure prevention and affordable housing is accessible to the 4th District. 2, to work closely with the City of Dover's Youth Advisory Committee to assess the needs and resources available to the youth of today. And 3, to conduct quarterly 4th District meetings to inform constituents of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that impact our future. My fellow 4th District constituents, my vision is simple. My vision is your vision. Roy Suller for the 4th District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sudler. Our next candidate for 4th District City Council seat is the Honorable Wallace R. Dixon.
I'm Wallace R. Dixon, candidate for the 4th District. I've been on the council for 2 years. Out of the 2 years, we have made some great strides. I intend to continue to ensure that our streets repaired, sidewalks, and streetlights are fully functional within the district. Continue to support and assistance is provided for the youth. It's vital that we remain vigilant and we guard against the grasp and reach of gains within our community. Educating our community and the city on our mutual needs and finding ways that we can grow our partnership in these demanding times. Promote respect and appreciation of individuals by working with civil groups, churches, and law enforcement to foster a higher level of cooperation. Working closely with the Board of Directors for the Downtown Partnership Revitalization Downtown Dover. And last but not least, improving the quality of life for senior citizens by enforcing city sanitation standards in dilapidated senior living quarters. Vote for Wallace Dixon.
Thank you, Councilman Dixon. Our final candidate for the 4th District City Council seat is Mr. Kenneth G. Roach.
Good evening, everyone. I know they say you usually save the best for last, so I'll try not to disappoint you. Just want to start off by thanking everyone for coming out tonight. I really do appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule and coming to listen to everyone here. Also, I want to thank all the candidates here because, truth be told, we all have the potential to be councilman or mayor. But up here, we know the blisters on the feet, the knuckles rubbed, out knocking signs in the midway of the night, trying to compete to get space for different places where you want to have your sign. So I commend you all for your hard work because there's one thing that's consistent with all of us here and all of you here who took your time. We love our city. If you don't know me, my name is Kenneth Roach, as she stated. Like some people, they have their story how they got here. I didn't have a choice because I'm what you call a Dover local. I'm born and raised here, and my address has never changed. 816 Slaughter Street, Dover, Delaware, in the heart of the 4th District. Down the street from the Boys and Girls Club in Simon Circle, where I learned a lot. I also was brought up in Mount Zion AME, and there's a lot of people here who maybe gave me a spanking or pinched me when I was talking during the sermon, so you all can raise your hand and wave and claim it. Also, I feel as though that I have to really give a lot of love and support to my family who all came out. If you could stand up, raise your hand. My support group, they're all here for me tonight. They're around the back. They got here late, but it's okay. About me. Currently, I am employed at Booker T. Washington Elementary School as a family crisis therapist. Prior to that, I worked for Child Protective Services for 5 years in our great city. Before that, I went to Bowie State. Unfortunately, I didn't want to go to Del State. I wanted to get away for a little bit, but I came back and got my master's at Delaware State University. Both my undergrad and my master's is in social work. So my entire life, I can honestly say I've been raised to serve. My mother, Valerie Lynn Roach, was a Catholic charity supervisor and did tremendous things in this community. I know a lot of people know her. My father, 30 years at Child Protective Services. So when it comes to being a part of the city and caring about the livelihood and the well-being of the people here, it wasn't a choice. It was something that I was always brought up to know. I honestly feel as though that everybody here has good ideas. Everyone here is going to tell you things that we all can shake our head and nod at because we all love our city. We wouldn't take the time to do what we have to do. We all have the same goal, but we might not all agree with how to get there. I honestly feel as though that there are several things that really need to be addressed. First is the community relationships as it pertains with the police. The Dover Police Department, when I grew up, was Officer Sandy, Officer Ralph, and you had a very positive idea in regards to what the police were for. I was told at Bowie State University by a professor that how can you have a positive connotation of someone you're supposed to trust if all you know is negativity? But that, also managing our budget properly, that we've been doing but continue to do a great job, and also continuing to look and to tap into new resources as it pertains to the city. Thank you so much. Kenneth Roach, 4th District.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roach. Having heard from all the candidates with their introductory comments, we will now go to the questions that have been posed by the audience. Most of the questions that we've received, there have been multiple questions dealing with the same topic, and so this means there's a great deal of interest in a lot of issues in the city. The first question, I will address. Some of them are directed at the Office of Mayor, others at Council, some all. So the first one is for all of the candidates, and there are three questions dealing with the same topic. City Hall is outdated, inadequate, not up to code, and not handicap accessible. Do we need a new one? How would you do it? That's the first question. The second, do you think that rehabilitating 5 East Reed Street and the old library has any merit? And thirdly, the Empire State Building was built in 15 months. Do you think we could get a new City Hall in less than 7 years? All right, we'll start out with our candidates for mayor, and we will go to Mayor Christensen.
Boy, is that a loaded question. But I think there is an answer. We currently have a group that's been put in place by our council president. We've had several offers come forward. We know that City Hall needs to be revamped. We know that 5 Reed Street, at the time that it was built, was not built entirely to the codes of today. We also have a library that's inundated with mold and gosh knows what else is in there. The old library, that is. So I think it would behoove us to take a long, hard look at those structures, see if they, number one, can be rehabilitated with little or no cost to the taxpayers. If the ultimate answer would be to sell them and to relocate to another position. And the other option is to build a new facility that will meet the entire needs of the city, both of City Hall and Reed Street. And I think we need to pursue those intelligently.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Mr. Gaudioso.
This is kind of ironic. I actually answered this question for a newspaper, but for some reason it never got into print. The city faces a choice between making costly repairs to its aging buildings that house departments that are spread out amongst them and building a new city municipal complex where all the departments could be housed under one. I've toured these buildings. I'll tell you, it's a real eye-opener. I believe the city can build a new complex, and I believe it can be funded through a bond issuance. I believe that if you put the utilities under the same roof as the rest of the departments, this will make the bond market and the, what do they call them, rating agencies look upon it in a favorable way.
Thank you, Mr. Gaudioso. Let's turn now to our 3rd District candidates with the same question, and we'll start out with Councilman Bonar.
Thank you, Ellen. Let me echo what Mayor Christensen and what Mr. Gaudioso have said. Both of these buildings are outdated. They're in very deplorable condition. They need a lot of expenditure to renovate them. I think we ought to consider very seriously a public-private partnership that would put these buildings back on the tax rolls instead of being tax-exempt properties. We have a city hall that needs to be expanded. I believe that we ought to put all city departments, meaning the electric and all the rest of the departments, under one roof so that you could go into one building in the city to do business and be in an area where you can contact every department within the city. It's going to be very expensive, but we're going to need to listen to you as to how soon you want to get it done. Do I think it can be done in less than 7 years? Absolutely, but it's going to take innovation and hard work.
Thank you, Councilman Bonar. Mr. Cole.
I agree that something needs to be done. We need to have a longer term vision, which means harder choices in the beginning. So we need to listen to you to figure out what that vision should be. It should be all departments under one roof. And if we have to make some tough decisions now, but in the long term it's a benefit overall, then I think those choices should be made. I feel like that over the last 5 to 7 years, things have just been moved around and nothing's really just been set in stone. And sometimes you just have to make that decision, listen to the constituents, and move forward with a plan.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Turning to our other 3rd District candidates, we'll start out with Mr. Anderson.
Simplicity is the best option. But I think what we're all neglecting to realize is that parking is also a big issue down in that area as well. So we do get these new multiplex, buildings. How are we going to handle the influx of cars and vehicles at these one little spot to make sure that, they can also get to the business that are downtown, the courthouse that is downtown, the city hall, the library, as well as the electric company, and all these municipals that we're trying to bring together, as well as waste management too. So I think the bigger thing is to make sure that we can house these developments, as well as make sure it's easy enough for our constituents and our citizens to get in and out to there, as well as the other developments around too.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Neal.
Well, the first thing that those of us who are just coming into the city are going to have to find out is we're going to have to kind of button our lip and listen. I want to hear from the staff, who basically there's been a story already in the news media about these buildings. And I also know that we're going to have problems coming up in the very near future with at least 2 of our power plants who are going through the same problem. Of course, we sell power, so therefore we'll probably be able to generate income from that. But the fact is, I want to know exactly what the problem is and what they're going to estimate the cost is and what the options are. I'm not going to make a commitment to you or tell you, yes, we're going to do that or when we're going to do that until I have the facts and figures. I'm the new kid on the block.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Moving now to the 4th District, we will start out with Mr. Roach.
I honestly feel that the first thing we need to do is make sure we deal with the people. Honestly, here is a great opportunity to be able to hear questions, but before you make a decision that may have ramifications in regards to debt on our revenue, we need to make sure that that's one of the priorities for my district. Honestly, I feel as though that obviously we need to renovate some of these buildings to make sure they're up to code and we can get them moving. But as Mr. Anderson stated, if you've ever been on a corner of Lockerman or anywhere downtown during the day or during a busy day, it's already hectic enough to try to move through those areas where the city hall is. So to be able to say that in 7 years, yeah, we're going to do something, I agree. We shouldn't really make comments in regards to projections as it pertains to an amount of time until we actually know if that's something that my district wants to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Councilman Dixon.
Yes, we need new buildings. With the dilapidated and far beyond repair of some of these buildings, we must look at the costs, compare them to different from which to build or repair or upgrade. We will look forward to the future. Will the future of these buildings be beyond 20 years, 30 years, 40 years before we look at them again? But we must continue to look at the buildings. Buildings only last for so long. They don't last a lifetime. So we must take consideration in how we want to do it, and mainly take information from our constituents.
Thank you, Councilman Dixon. Mr. Sudler.
I feel that all city infrastructure should reflect today's code in which we hold the average property owner and taxpayer accountable for, leading by example, or have a new facility to accommodate the staff. And thirdly, in regards to 5 East Reed Street, I'm not too familiar with that property, so I don't want to comment on that property at this present moment. Thank you, but I will research and find out a little bit more about that property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sudler. Moving on to our first district candidates, we'll start out with Councilwoman Williams.
Thank you. I am the chair of the committee that is currently looking at this. This committee is basically, it's not a question of whether we're going to need new buildings. The question is, are we going to renovate? Are we going to rebuild? Are we going to do a demolition? There are many different areas we can go. What we do know is we cannot stay in the same building. We can't house our all of our staff, and the building is really in bad shape. I am very excited about the possibility of a public-private partnership that would allow the privates to come in, build the building for us. We'd have to pay rent, of course, but it would go back on the tax rolls. The other option is to float a bond and borrow the money to pay for it ourselves. But either way, it can be done in a matter of a couple of years, not 7.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. Mr. Hosfeld.
Certainly we can do this project in 7 years. That's without question. The buildings that we're talking about, 5 East Street, the old library and City Hall, having worked in these buildings, I can tell you it's beyond repair. We need to do something new. We need to do something different. How we get there is a different story. That's something we need to study, and that's something we need to look at. It's not a decision that we're going to make overnight. We need input from the citizens. We need input from, I guess, a committee, if you will. But again, I just don't agree with trying to renovate the buildings that we currently have. It's just not going to work. We need to start new, start fresh.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Turning to our next question, we have several questions dealing with the same topic, and that has to do with the reorganization of city government. I will read all these questions. If you need me to read them again, I certainly will do that for you. What is your opinion on the city manager reporting to the mayor? That's the first question. What is your opinion of the mayor being responsible for the city police department? Second question. This is the third. What do you think should have the most power, who do you think should have the most power when it comes to making decisions in Dover? An elected mayor or an unelected city manager? Why do you feel this way? What is your view on the role of the mayor? And finally, because of the recent confusing decisions of the council regarding changing the city charter form of government, much more public input is sorely needed. How would you accommodate that need? So all of these are dealing with the same topic, and as I said, I'd be happy to reread them to you. And why don't we start this time with the 4th District, and we'll start out with Mr. Sudler.
I was just about to raise my hand and say, could you please repeat the multiple questions in one question?
Would all of you like to hear them again?
I think
One more time.
Okay, one more time.
that's a combo.
What is your opinion on the city manager reporting to the mayor? What is your opinion of the mayor being responsible for the city police department? Who do you think should have the most power when it comes to making decisions in Dover? An elected mayor or an unelected city manager? What is your view on the role of the mayor? And finally, because of the recent confusing decisions of the council regarding changing the city charter form of government, much more public input is sorely needed. How would you accommodate that need? I'll tell you what we're going to do, timekeepers, on this one. We're going to give them an extra 30 seconds. How about that? Okay, so instead of 1 minute, you get a minute and a half. Okay, I'm flexible. Is the consensus you'd like 2 minutes on this question?
Please.
All right, let's go.
I believe that the city manager should report to the mayor being the chief executive officer of the city. I believe that the power should be invested in city council, as city council is the legislative body that governs the climate and navigates the climate and ordinances of the city of Dover, the legislative aspect. I believe that we should have a strong mayor council form of government if we're going to have a full-time mayor, and if the mayor is going to hold the title of chief executive officer. And Finally, I believe that the chief should report to the mayor, chief of police should report to the mayor, and also report to city council, and decisions should be made to appoint the chief of police with the confirmation. The mayor should be able to appoint the chief of police with the confirmation of city council.
Thank you, Mr. Sudler. Our next candidate from the 4th District is Mr. Roach.
Thank you. In regards to the city manager reporting to the mayor and the whole confusion as it pertains to this stronger mayor discussion, as I stated in a conversation I've had with several people in regards to the situation, I honestly feel as though with the recent confusion as it pertains to the restructuring of our form of government, these are some of the smartest people I've really sat around and had conversations with. So at this point in time, if they're having confusion in regards to how to make it get done, honestly, I really at this point in time would want to make sure that we stop and make an informed decision that includes the people. Regardless of what position we have in city council, regardless of who reports to who, I honestly think that it should all be incumbent in regards to what you all want, because even with elected officials, we're elected by you. So therefore, if we're making decisions as it pertains to restructuring our whole form of government, and you all are informed with what I feel as though it should always be clear, consistent communication. Because if you've ever been to a city hall meeting, sometimes I listen to them and I'm writing down, I got 2 degrees, and it's very difficult. And like I said, for the people that have been doing this for so long, have issues in regards to how they want to structure the government in regards to the mayor reporting to the city manager to the mayor, I honestly feel as though we really just need to do our job as council people, beat the streets. You shouldn't knock on people's door only when you need elections and votes. You need to do it often to figure out what you all want to make our city better and continue to move into a better Dover. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Councilman Dixon.
I believe the same thing as Mrs. Roach, Mr. Sudler. Main thing is coming from you. You're the power that gives to us. We should always inform the public or the citizens of the city. We just don't make decisions on our own. We have you here to help us make decisions. So we need to hear from the community and the districts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dixon. We'll move now to our 3rd District candidates, and we'll start out with Mr. Neal.
Having worked with a very strong mayor, William Donald Schaefer, who was an advocate of the reign of Richard Daley in Chicago, I would say no. Because unless you had the mayor's ear, you weren't going to get in your district what you basically needed. The second thing is that you're going to have to figure out who you want to blame for your taxes. Because if it's a council that has to set the tax rate and the mayor basically is controlling all of the revenue and where it goes, then it's going to be the council who's going to hear from you. One of the questions was, what about that city manager? Well, the purpose of the city manager is to have a professional doing the job. But that professional, even if whether he's under the mayor or he's under the council, can get fired. And that's the point. If he doesn't do the job, you fire him. He's not the person who's actually setting policy. Policy is set by the people right now in the council. And knowing the positives and the negatives of working with a very strong mayor, which it still has to go through the chain and get up to the change the charter and go to the legislator and work it out. The answer is, I would say no at this point. I'm open to listen because, you can't form an opinion and simply sit there if somebody else can convince you that it's a better way of working.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Anderson.
Of course, I believe all decisions at the end of the day are going to come from our residents in our city of Dover. I want us as well as the 3rd District and as well as the rest of the city of Dover is to understand is that your elected council members are your voice. That will never change. You put them in office, you don't like them, you take us out. But at the end of the day, we are here to serve you. We serve you. Our mayor is here to serve the city. What I want to see is a full-time mayor that still has the power to veto, because when something comes up that chain and something that you as the city still really just don't understand and don't like, it won't happen. We need that one person that can be able to do that in a crisis in the middle of the night when you get that phone call. Are we going to go through a chain of people, or we want to go to that one person that's going to be able to make sure that the city of Dover is going to be taken care of? That's my decision.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Moving to our candidates for 1st District. We'll get back to the other 3rd District, don't worry. We'll start out with Mr. Hosfeld.
Thank you. You know, the public spoke, although it was several years ago, and the public said we wanted a full-time mayor. If we were going to change that, now is the perfect time to get public input and see what you wanted. We have an election coming up. We could put it to referendum, and we could put this to rest. But for some reason, we rushed this to a vote, and no one has owned up or no one has come clean with the reason why we did that. That's the frustrating part to me. If we're going to have a full-time mayor, whoever's in the office has to have measurable responsibilities so that you, the public, can judge him or her on their responsibilities and how successful they were every 4 years. I grew up, if you will, in the police department with the mayor being in charge. I had no issues with that. As chief of police, I was appointed by the mayor. I had no issues reporting to the mayor. I worked with the city manager on a regular basis. I worked with the finance director on a regular basis. So whether the police chief falls under the city manager or falls under the mayor, in the form of government that we have, makes no difference. Police work is still going to get done. Police officers are still going to arrest the bad guys, and they're still going to keep the citizens safe. So the bottom line is we should have put this to referendum. We shouldn't have voted on it in the beginning of March. We shouldn't have voted on it again the second meeting in March. And now we're at this point where you're as confused as the rest of us. So that's where I stand on the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Councilwoman Williams.
I agree. The confusion is enormous. I was elected to council in 2002, and through the entire time, and we've been through several mayors and several city managers, there's always been a conflict. And the conflict is because you got two chefs in the kitchen. Now, either we're going to have a strong mayor, or we're going to have a city council, city manager form of government. If you want to preserve, one of the things I like about the city manager form of government is that if the city manager doesn't do the job, they can get fired. But if you want the public to have input in what's happening with the city, then bring the mayor back under council, make him the president of council, let him preside over council, and let that person, let council be the people that the city manager, as he does right now, report to. You've got to have one boss, not two. Right now we've got two, and it's causing all kinds of problems. And the most recent problem it caused was the whole issue about the police and the 10 new officers. It didn't go through the normal channels. It went through around the city manager and through on to council. And that's not the way those deliberations should occur. That's $10 million we were talking about over time. So we need to have a form of government that works for us and that is not confusing to the people in our city or to the officials that are trying to work within that structure.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. Moving to our other 3rd District candidates, we'll start out with Mr. Cole.
This question's kind of interesting to me because I taught history and government for 18 years, so I would love to just lecture you on the structures of checks and balances and all that. But I agree with Mr. Hosfeld in this case. It has been decided, and I'd like to go in reverse order of the questions kind of because I don't understand why it hasn't been as transparent in the last couple of months, why this rush or why this confusion. And like I said, as I've been walking the different neighborhoods and just talking to people, and it seems like people want a neighborhood safety. They want the cops to do their jobs. They don't care who they report to per se. They want their lives to go on. They want their services to be there. Why there's checks and balances already in place? Like what what is the need now to see that change come about? And I just feel like the transparency hasn't been there. And why hasn't it been put to a referendum then? What's the issue there? There should be checks and balances, and it just seems like it's a simple question there.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Councilman Bonar.
Thank you very much, Alan. There was a vote taken the first part of March. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be at that council meeting. And during that council meeting, it was decided by council to essentially give every bit of power that is in the city of Dover to the mayor's office. Every single office in the city would have reported to the mayor. And, you know, I just have this innate fear of seeing our city, and God forbid it should ever happen. We've been lucky to this point. I have this innate fear of having one person in control of an entire city, including its police department. We've seen that happen in other municipalities, and it's led to problems. I think some of you that relocated here from New Jersey saw it. Some of you that relocated here from Pennsylvania saw it. So we changed it back to where council has some authority over it. I personally believe that we should have a full-time mayor. The mayor has to be the face of the city, going out and meeting with economic development people and talking to people. What we really need is a job description. There's no job description for the mayor other than what's based in the charter. And it's not going to be easy to devise all of this and solve all of this. If we had let this go the way it was, the mayor would have had absolute control over every department in this city. Council would have had no control. That, to me, was wrong, and that's why we changed it.
Thank you, Councilman Bonar. Now, we have heard from all our city council people on this issue. Now let us hear from the two candidates for mayor. And we'll start out with Mr. Christensen.
Thank you, Ellen. In 1983, oh my gosh, that's a long time ago, I ran for city council, and I asked the question, what does Dover want to be when we grow up? And here we are 32 years later asking the same question, what does Dover want to be when we grow up? Now, I agree with Council President Bonar and Councilwoman Williams that the mayor shouldn't have all the responsibility. But believe you me, when the call is made in the middle of the night to the mayor that there's an incident going on, I want him to be in charge of the police department. I think the mayor and council should sit down and in earnest and candid discussion with the citizens and divide up the responsibility so that the mayor is the chief executive officer of the city manager is the chief operation officer of the city, with the treasurer, the assessor, and the city clerk's office reporting directly to council, and council having the ability to hire and fire the city manager. Why do I believe that council should have that responsibility? Because I'll share with you a story. When I went in as a young councilman to ask about a hole being repaired on Pear Street in my district at that time, the very arrogant city manager at the time pushed the charter across the table to me and said, come back and see me when you have 4 other councilmen. Now, if your safety depends on one person being responsible, do you want to wait, if the city manager is in charge of the police department, to get 4 other people to go with the person who has the complaint to get something done? I don't think so. With a full-time mayor with distinct responsibilities laid out, the buck stops here.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Mr. Gaudioso.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we got to a question that I really do know a little bit about. And I, too, was a teacher of government. One of the reasons I ran for this office is because of this very issue. And whoever asked this question, I'd like to point out from the very beginning, I've had this asked to me before. They said, what about you have an elected mayor, but you have an unelected city manager? That's a bogus question. Even though the city manager is not elected, He is appointed by your elected officials. And one advantage to your city manager, I'll tell you flat out right now, is that the city manager, should he mess up and cost the city money in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, he'll be out the door, because that'll provide cause for his dismissal. You won't have to worry about waiting for an election to take place to remove a mayor. And sometimes people have very short memories as to what actually happened. Another point I'd like to make is that city management, city council, city manager form of government is one of the most popular forms of government for the size city that we have. Now, any of you who have gone to city council meetings, you've heard me, some of you may not like it, but you've heard me get up and speak. And I know a little bit about what can go wrong with a powerful mayor, as I pointed out to the city council very succinctly. I can give you two prime examples. There was a comparison made of cities that were capital cities in their states. Councilman brought this up, and he tried to make the comparison of the three. Well, I do a lot of research, and let me tell you, the city mayor of Trenton ended up in prison. He's still there at the moment. The city mayor of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, well, if you read the Wall Street Journal, just let me finish this point. If you read the Wall Street Journal, he was largely responsible for almost bankrupting the city. Now, you don't think that could happen. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm saying there's a potential for happen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Gaudioso. We will now turn to the next question, which has to do with taxes. There are four different questions dealing with taxes. First one, police services protect us and our property. Should our property tax fully pay for police services? That's number one. Would you be in favor of raising the public accommodations tax by 2% and have it dedicated to city economic development efforts? That's two. The third one, raising services, isn't that the same as raising taxes? That's three. And finally, should there be a 10% cap on tax increases unless the people weigh in with a referendum? All right, we'll start out this time with the 1st District, and we'll start out with Councilwoman Williams.
Would you repeat those, Ellen, please?
Yes. Police services protect us and our property. Should our property tax fully pay for police services? Would you be in favor of raising the public accommodations tax by 2% and have it dedicated to city economic development? Doesn't raising services, isn't it the same as raising taxes? And finally, should there be a 10% cap on tax increases unless the people weigh in with a referendum?
Thank you. Well, the police are paid by the general fund. Unfortunately, in the city of Dover, the general fund is subsidized by the electric revenues. And so in order for our city to be as well protected as we are and have as many services as we have, it's because of those electric funds. I'm not familiar with the public accommodations tax. I'd have to look into that, so I can't answer that. The part about 10% without a referendum, I would support that. I think that you could easily cap at 10%. 10% is a tremendous amount of money but there are other ways to raise funds without taxing homeowners. The city of Wilmington gets $2 million per year for payment in lieu of taxes for all the state buildings they have in Wilmington. Do you know how much we get? $300,000. Do you know how many buildings we have? How many parking spaces? There's many more ways to solve this tax problem than putting it on the backs of the homeowners.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. Mr. Hosfeld.
Thank you. Just so you're aware that, again, the budget for the police department is roughly $13 million. The city taxes don't pay for the police department. They don't even come close to covering the police department. I think we're about $2 million short. Public accommodations I would not be opposed to. Those individuals coming into the city, taking advantage of our services, using our services, I'm not opposed to having them pay for that. A 10% cap on taxes, I don't understand. Most of the residents that I have spoke to as I've been walking through the neighborhoods of the 1st District, they're of the opinion that if we would have been doing this incrementally over the years, we wouldn't be at a point to where we're talking about raising taxes 10% in one lump sum. And again, city services don't necessarily raise taxes, but again, we need to provide fundamental services, whether it be public works, whether it be police, fire, ambulance, so that we have employers and we have businesses that want to come here and set up shop in Dover. We have to have those services in place in order for them to want to come here. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Why don't we ask our candidates for mayor to weigh in on this question on taxes, and we'll start out with Mr. Gaudioso.
Well, first of all, I think it's, from what everyone has said, it's pretty obvious that to provide police protection solely from the general fund is almost out of the question unless you're planning on raising taxes. The utility fund puts a lot of money into our general fund. The 2% occupancy tax sounds good, except for one little problem. You're obviously going to have a problem with the hospitality industry. It's going to have an impact on them. And that's going to you're going to have to weigh the pros and cons of that. The 10% cap on with a referendum, I would go along with what Mrs. Williams said, and that is that that's a lot of money to be raised, and I don't see why that wouldn't be a problem. And the idea of the services. We have to provide the services, so you have to pay for them somehow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gaudioso. Mayor Christensen.
Thank you, Ellen. You know, over the last 13 years, I left council in 2001. We've kicked the can down the road to actually meet the needs of the city and maintain city services. 55% of the properties in the city of Dover are taxable. And Mrs. Williams makes a good point. The city of Wilmington gets $4 million for their untaxable properties that belong to the state. And we can do better if we approach our state legislators, I'm sure. But that's not the cure-all to end all. 2% increase on the accommodations tax is questionable. It may be successful, it may not be, but that has to go through, the authorization for that has to go through the state legislature. But I will tell you one thing, that if we have to raise taxes over 10%, all of us should get out of town because we haven't done our job. So the bottom line is, if we get to that point, you come to my office, if I'm still fortunate enough to be there, and say, Robin, it's time to go, and then go see the rest of the folks and put some new people in here that know how to do the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. We'll move on to our candidates for 4th District right now on this question, and we'll start out with Councilman Dixon.
I believe the same as Mr. Roberts. It's a hard decision when it comes down to taxes and raising taxes. We want to be fair to everybody. We all have to live here, and we all have to be able to deal with what we have here. We don't just want to just raise taxes to be raising taxes, because then it's what's the use? It's hard. We don't have enough basics where homeowners that we get a buck of our taxes from live here. 55% or 50% of people that own homes. So we have to do a complete study, work it out collectively, and be fair to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dixon. Mr. Roach.
Honestly, I feel as though that we really need to take a look in regards to the revenue in the city before we start talking about raising taxes. Obviously, as it pertains to property taxes, those are the people that are here. In my opinion, we need to get more people here. we have a lot of entities here in the city of Dover that we don't tap into. Delaware State University, Wesley College, Del Tech, Wilmington University. And if we can keep some of those people here, we can actually start to generate more revenue, so we can have more people living here to buy houses, to want to stay. But if we're talking about raising taxes 10%, you're not going to have people staying at all. We have to get people to buy in here, and I think that by utilizing some of the untapped resources that we have in the city, we can generate more revenue without having to worry about these tax increases to take care of some of our things that we need to handle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Mr. Sudler.
I've never been an advocate of raising taxes at any time for anything unless it's public safety. I believe that if we are going to raise taxes, I think it should be a situation where it's a double taxation situation. If the King County, if you're being taxed for property for King County and city, then maybe we can ask the state to participate or help in possibly paying for the police services. But I've never been a firm believer in increasing taxes. I've always felt like there's other ways, grants, sponsors, or people who are willing to donate money from other agencies. So,
Thank you, Mr. Sudler. Moving to the 3rd District now, same question. We'll start out with Mr. Neal.
Number one, hotel tax, no-brainer. Stop and think about it. We have Firefly. We have Wesley opening up their rooms for people there. We have people coming from out of town. They're going to come down for the Big Barrel. That's a terrific lineup that they have of country and western. We have DSU having homecoming at football games and the like. We might as well get the money from out of state and not in their own pockets. Now, here's something that's hidden that nobody knows about or talks about, and that is leased land communities. My value of my property, my assessment, dropped 26% between 2010 and now. And the reason is that we do not hold these leased land landlords accountable for their maintenance of their communities. Therefore, the properties drop in value. And that's something the state can help with. Maybe we should take a look about what we can do to kind of boost that as well and keep that tax rate up for the people who pay it legitimately.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Anderson.
Well, with the current 8% for the current tax, we're talking about raising 2%. Well, that would raise it to 2% for those accommodation luxury taxes that we're talking about for people who are coming home to visit, our families, or people who are coming to visit Wesley College, Delaware State University, or just coming to visit us, on a weekend. So we're going to actually raise a tax for them, or Firefly, which comes once a year, or the races, which we, have, which a lot of those people we forget aren't staying really in hotels. They are camping out on the grounds. So for us to sit there and put an additional tax on those hotels for our residents who sometimes, honestly, believe it or not, a lot of our homeless utilize a lot of those hotels as well too. It's not just out-of-towners. It's not just people who are just passing through. As far as the 10% cap, of course, but we also got to think about what about a reduction in taxes. Once we start making all this revenue, what's the money going to? What are we going to do for our residents? When we start lowering those taxes too, we need to talk about a reverse plan as well. If we're going to raise anything, how we're going to come back from it.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Our other 3rd District candidates, we'll start out with Councilman Bonar.
Thank you, Ellen. First of all, I think people need to realize that a great deal of our expenses in the city are caused by people who don't live in the city. We have about 38,000 people who are residents of the city, but we have in excess of 20,000 people a day that come into the city every day and expect to get city services. 37% of our property in the city of Dover is non-taxable because it's state property. We only get it's state or non-profit property. We need to address that. Public accommodations tax, I think we can take a look at that. I think that's a very worthwhile discussion that needs to be had. I also think that I agree with Mayor Christensen. If we have to raise taxes over 10%, I think we shouldn't be here. It's as simple as that. We ought to try to get our finances under control, and I think we need to do it this year. We're going to be very short of money, and the state's going to take a large chunk of it unless they can balance their budget.
Thank you, Councilman Bonar. Mr. Cole.
Yes, I think we all need to be honest here. Is any of us that get elected, the fiscal year 16 we're looking at it's going to be a struggle. So we need to make honest, hard decisions. Everything is on the table. Everything is on the table. We need to look at revenues, expenditures. In my job now, we look at school budgets, we look at referendums, we look at all aspects of revenues that come into school districts, and we roll our sleeves up and we look at where can things be cut, where can we put things, where can we ensure that the citizen services are met, the student services are met in the case of education. And I feel like that we just need to be totally transparent in this. I feel like in walking around and talking with people, people feel like there hasn't been transparency and people just are losing trust and confidence in their elected leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cole. Our next question is really directed at our city council candidates, and it has to do with your accessibility to your constituents. There are two questions dealing with this. If elected, will you be visible 365 days in the year to the community? Will you have an open office where you can be reached at all times? Will you manage will you manage to attend council meetings? And secondly, how do you feel that you can give 100% to your district? Will you be accessible for the constituents 24/7? And why don't we start out with third district candidates? They haven't gone first yet. We'll start out with Mr. Anderson.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson.
Sorry.
Thank you. Okay, let me see if I have all these questions correct.
I can repeat them.
Okay.
If elected, will you be visible 365 days a year in the community? Will you have an open office where you can be reached at all times? Will you manage to attend council meetings? And also, how do you feel that you can give 100% to your district? Will you be accessible for the constituents 24/7?
Accessibility, absolutely. With being 2015, we have social media, we have regular media, and we also have old school media, which is regular telephone. If you really need to get me, if it's 2 a.m. in the morning, and you need to get to your councilman, of course I'm going to be able to answer my phone and see what the problem is and direct you to the right place or person. Me physically being in the city 365 days a year, I can't guarantee that because I don't know what could happen. If something happens in Philadelphia, I have to rush there. Best believe I'm going to see what's going on with my mama, whether it be a relative or anywhere. However, there's 2 council persons per district. So if I can't be there, I'm pretty sure the other person can handle what needs to happen at that point in time. But yes, I will be available 24/7 through any type of media or knocking on my door, or at least to be able to contact me through email or telephone or however you need to get to me, pigeon, courier, whatever. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Neal.
As far as accessibility is concerned, 24/7, if you don't believe me, ask my wife, St. Dawn. Saint is not her given name. That's the one she's earned. And it happens when you're president of a homeowners association. Attendance, yes, I hope to have 100% attendance as far as that goes. And as far as visibility, anytime except when I'm in a shower.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. First District, Councilwoman Williams.
I believe that part is in the oath. If you take the oath and abide by the oath, then you represent the people that have elected you. And that means being there for them, being available to them, and taking care to understand and to... When I first got elected to City Council, it took me 2 years to learn the basics. It took me 6 years to learn the things beyond that. It is a 24-hour job in any way you take it emotionally, because I kind of like what Mr. Roach said. None of us are here because we don't love the city of Dover. We're here because we do. And that means that we're committed to it. And for whatever that takes, you stay committed.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. Mr. Hosfeld.
Thank you. The residents of the 1st District, I think, can tell you that I've been visible. I've been out knocking on doors, talking to people, walking through the different neighborhoods of the district, and I've had a great time doing it. Being visible, I have no issues with that. Obviously, as Chief of Police, my door was always open. I don't think there's anybody in the room or anybody in the community that didn't say that I wasn't able or wasn't willing to meet with their group or their body or whatever it may have been. There's different ways to reach out to the community, whether it be through social media or whether it be through the town hall style meetings. When was the last time we did that? It's nothing new. It's something that we can do. It's a way to keep in touch with your constituents and to truly hear what they want rather than your officials telling you what they want. I think that's the important part of this. And as far as being responsible to constituents, obviously I have no issues with that. As Chief of Police, 24/7 was not uncommon for me, and the job I hold now is not uncommon. So, yes, I would be available.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Moving on to the 4th District, we'll start out with Mr. Sudler.
As chairman of the Dover Human Relations Commission and committee member for 10 years, I would say I have a 99% attendance rate. As a Legislative Finance and Administration Committee member, I have a 100% attendance rate. And for those who watch City Council on TV, quite often you can see me sitting there in the audience, attending and listening, almost, I would say, about 95% rate. So I've been here. I'll always be here. You can have my phone number. People know where I work. There's people in the audience that can vouch for that. And yes, I will always be accessible to my constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sudler. Councilman Dixon.
Yes, I spent 38 years in the military, 24-hour day duties. I'm committed to the city for 24 hours. Call my phone, whatever you have to do, I will be there to listen to you and try to help with the city and our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dixon. Mr. Roach.
I believe in being totally transparent, and I honestly want to say to you, 365 days a year, I will be here in spirit and in body, because we all need a vacation sometimes. So I'm not going to say I'm going to be in Dover 365 days. But as far as accessibility, 302-382-1860. My number's been the same since I had a Nokia phone that was a brick that you could play Snake on it. It's never going to change. It's not going anywhere. As far as my office, it's at 816 Slaughter Street, Dover, Delaware, 19904. That's my address. Knock on my door anytime. I'm 90% sure you'll see kids playing in the yard, or you'll see me walking down New Street, walking in any neighborhood in the city. Honestly, I love my 4th District. I was born and raised here. My family's been born and raised here. You can see a roach anywhere. And I'm not talking about the bugs. I'm talking about my family. If you talk to them, they'll talk to me. And you know for a fact that when it comes down to it, as far as being open, responsive, vote Roach. I am the 4th District because we are the 4th District. You know where to find me. Come see me.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. 3rd District, Mr. Cole.
This is a pretty simple question. I mean, the job I have now, I am available to all the people that I advocate and represent in the educational field. It would not change in this case. It would be exactly the same. You can reach me, again, just to repeat what everyone has said, you can reach me at any time. My wife and daughter and son will attest to that. But again, that's what we're here for. I don't think any of us would be here if we weren't committed or had a love for constituents and doing the work of constituents. So, I mean, it's a pretty simple question, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Councilman Bonar.
Thank you. My job in real life in 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, is the public advocate for the state of Delaware. As such, I represent every resident of the state of Delaware, and I have made it my personal policy to give them my cell phone number and urge them to call me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have a record that is clear on that. I answer emails. Even if I'm on vacation, I return telephone calls. Whether it's Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Christmas Day. My cell phone number is 242-2351, And you're welcome to stop by my office, which is at 29 South State Street, anytime, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Our next question is directed to the office of mayor. If any of the city council candidates would like to answer that question, just raise your hand and you can. To the candidates for mayor, what are you going to do about the brown water in Dover if elected mayor? And we'll start out with Mayor Christensen.
Thank you, Ellen. You know, I was telling somebody the other day that the city of Dover, if you walk down the hall of the city hall as you come in the public area there, we have a number of awards that hang on the wall from years ago when our water was judged to be the best on the East Coast. And then we took federal funds to do a well and water plant on Long Point Road. And one of the caveats for taking federal money was that we had to put chlorine in our water. The city of Dover's downtown infrastructure and the infrastructure in the entire city is rather old, and the chlorine started to work on the pipes. And subsequently, we had light brown water. Then somebody over at the Puzzle Palace, Legislative Hall, said that we needed to have fluoride in our water. And the combination was put together to accommodate that state mandate, and now we have brown water. And as Ms. Williams brought out the point, we need to work on our infrastructure, and part of that is replacing the scaling pipes that give you the lovely brown water.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Mr. Gaudioso.
You know, it sounds like a simple question, but I think that Mayor Christensen hit it right on the head. It's actually an expensive problem to solve because it requires a pretty large capital expenditure to repair the infrastructure. But I'm going to tell you right now, this is what I went back to originally. Every one of these issues comes down to a financial decision, and they all cost money. The question is, you have to how are you going to prioritize them, and then how are you going to come up with the funds to pay for it? Dover is faced with major financial decisions that are going to impact the city. Anyone who can't see that, you're living in la-la land. I hate to put it to you that way, but it's the truth. It's the way I feel.
Thank you, Mr. Gaudioso. Would anybody else like to? Okay, we'll go to the 3rd district. Okay, we'll go to the 4th district. We'll start out with the 3rd district. I saw Mr. Bonar's hand go up. Councilman Bonar.
Thank you, Ellen. It's very important for you to realize that you are going to have brown water. In the very near future, it will probably accelerate a little bit. This is due to the fact we have cast iron pipes in the city, we have chemicals in the city, and because of engineering, the water flow in the city breaks a lot of those rust particles free. When the new electric plant goes online in about a month, you're going to see an influx of brown water. In fact, some of the people out on the east side of town have already seen it. It will flush itself out. It's important for you to realize that it is not harmful to your health. It's aesthetically unattractive. And some of it, if it is too thick, can be filtered out. But I wanted to let you know, in all honesty, that you are going to see some additional brown water issues over the next several months. But like Mr. Gaudioso rightfully pointed out, and Mayor Christensen pointed out, it's very expensive to replace 200 miles of water line.
Thank you, Councilman Bonar. Mr. Cole.
Again, it just comes down to transparency. There's going to have to be some tough decisions made in the fiscal year 16, and everything's going to have to be looked at. So, I mean, that's just where we're at.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. 4th District wanted to weigh in on this. Mr. Sudler, you had your hand up.
I believe that we should do a cost analysis and a health analysis. Cost analysis to see how much it would cost to replace the old pipes through a period of time. I believe that this issue is a health issue concern that I, for one, would be willing to pay additional taxes to increase the lifespan of my constituents and the city of Dover residents.
Any other? Mr. Roach, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, I was basically just going to say, similar to what the both of them said, honestly, in regards to the actual data or research that has been done in regards to the long-term effects of the water. I heard one person say that it's not harmful, one person said that they are harmful. I think we really need to look at that, because as we said, nobody should be forced to have to take a bath or drink water that isn't healthy at all. If there are any issues, yeah, I understand it may not look right, but you can get a Brita, take care of it. But honestly, like I said, in a joking manner, because that's me, I try to be very transparent in my conversations, but if it's an issue, take care of it. But as they all stated, when it comes down to any decision that's going to be made in the future, we're going to have to speak with our constituents, figure out what they feel as though is highest on priority, and we have to know that it's going to cost money, and we have to work diligently to try to find different revenue streams to take care of all these issues we're going to have to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Councilman Dixon.
I hate to be a repeater, but that's what I am. Being there in the city now, we deal with this on a daily basis, trying to take care of things that are more important to you, and we come to you for answers. We'd like for you to come to us with some answers or some questions, not just tonight, but from this night on, so we can know what we can do for the for the people.
Thank you. Would any of the other districts like to answer this question? All right. First District, Councilwoman Williams.
We're talking about the cost of the replacements of the water pipes, $1 million for every mile, I believe. We'll all be dead before all the pipes in this city are replaced. It's a commitment that will go on forever until they find some kind of technology that can hold the water and not put any foreign particles in it. It is the number one infrastructure need of the city. And the second one is our roads. For those of you who have noticed a lot of potholes since the last winter, those two things are the biggest things we're facing.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. Mr. Hosfeld.
At the risk of repeating what everybody else has said, I won't go into it. It's a problem. We all know it's a problem. It's something we need to address going forward. But it's not a quick process by any means, no.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Would our other third district? Yes. Okay, Mr. Neal.
Basically, I wonder, you've listened to the fact that we have to replace all these buildings, all these pipes, and power plants, which we haven't even talked about. Maybe we're crazy for saying, hey, elect me, elect me. But somebody's got to be there, and somebody's got to do it. And the only thing we can do is bring the best we possibly can to the table and try to figure it out.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Anderson.
I just want to encourage everybody to always check cityadover.com. They do have little messages up there that, let you know when there might be some brown water issues, as well as some other things that are coming up in our city. Cityadover.com. Chevis Anderson, 21st. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Our next question, again, has to do with the organization of city government with a slightly different twist. What are your feelings on instituting the position of fire police within the fire department, freeing up valuable Dover Police Department time and resources, which also would be more expedient and cost-effective? Okay, we'll start out with our 4th district, and we'll start out with Mr. Roach.
You said fire police implemented within the fire department?
Within the fire department, yes.
Obviously, if we can have more volunteers to take care of different issues within the city that we wouldn't have to pay for, that'd be great. It seems like a very good idea, and I will honestly look into it to see if there is any way it can happen, because if we can actually increase the response time as it pertains to Dover PD, that's great, because we know that they're doing the best that they can with what they have. So when you give them a call, it will be a major benefit that they respond a whole lot quicker, or even a little bit quicker, because when you're in crisis or in dire need, the last thing you want to do is have to wait and wait and wait. So honestly, I feel as though anything that we can do that's more beneficial as it pertains to the city and the district, by means, why not try it?
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Councilman Dixon.
Well, my feelings are fire police deal with fires. City police deal with other than fires. They deal with crime. and other things that happen in our city in our communities. I feel that if they could handle it or be trained to do some of these other things, like we have the cadets now, then it would be some help to us. But to me, it would cause more problems with a fire policeman that's dealing with fires more than crimes and other things that deal in the community to come in. You have more suits coming out your way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dixon. Mr. Sudler.
I would have to review the pros and cons of implementing that transition. Currently, I'm in favor of the City of Dover's fire police marshals. They've done an excellent job. I'm dealing with them now. They're very effective, trust me. And, you know, I feel safe, a little bit safer with them knowing the codes and being there on a daily basis, separate from the fire department individuals. So it was something I would definitely explore. But at the same time, currently, right now, from what I see, I'm in favor of the City of Dover's Fire Marshal Department.
Thank you, Mr. Sudler. Moving to our first district, we'll start out with Mr. Hosfeld.
Thank you. Historically, we have used the fire police working in conjunction with the Dover Police Department, whether it be parades, whether it be an extra duty assignment. You'll see the fire police out there working hand in hand with our police officers directing traffic. We also use them at Dover Downs. We use them for various functions throughout the city. The cost, obviously, to bring a fire policeman in versus paying an officer overtime, there's a huge difference there, and that's the reason that we do that. And I know the firefighters in the room may correct me, but I believe a lodge, if you will, for lack of a better term, of fire police would have to be sanctioned by the volunteer fire department within that jurisdiction. So I believe that's something that's going to have to be worked out with the City of Dover firefighters, and whether or not they want fire police. It has to be worked out through them. There's an agreement, and I'm not sure what it is. Obviously, I'm a police officer, not a firefighter. So I know Mayor Christensen may be able to lend some credence to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Councilwoman Williams.
I believe that very, very similar to Mr. Hosfeld, this needs to be decided by the fire company. We are one of the most fortunate cities, and as was already stated, the only capital city in America that has a volunteer fire company. The cost of a paid fire company would be astronomical, and talk about having to raise money. It would be impossible for us with our current, we don't have that kind of ability. I'm very, very much impressed and have always been looked to our state and our city fire marshals to provide the services they do in investigating fires. But this is something I think should be with the fire company.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. Moving to the 3rd District, we'll start out with Mr. Anderson.
I'm going to have to agree with a lot of my colleagues up here is that yes, it should stay with the fire and the police should stay with the police, but in the same sense, I'd see more prevention programs out there on both sides where we can actually have more education on fire prevention or public safety or fire safety as well too. So in order to see how we can maybe divert some of those funds that we are saving to some of those public services for the public.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Neal.
The fire department would love to be able to update their technology. It's way behind the times, and they're doing a terrific job. What they really would like to have, and if anybody here is a grant writer, they need a grant writer to see if we can find some outside money to bring in to be able to help them to do the job that they're doing. Remember, we're talking about volunteers. So as far as the fire thing's concerned, I think that's not a top thing on their priority. I think they'd like to get that grant writer.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. We'll go up to our mayoral candidates before we go to our other 3rd District candidates. And would you, the mayoral candidates, like to weigh in on this question? And we'll start out with Mayor Christensen.
Thank you, Ellen. 1882 Robbins Hose Company, #1, was founded, with the fire chief being the autonomous authority. Robbins Hose Company serves as the Dover Volunteer Fire Department. And there's been always great cooperation between the city and the city police. Robbins Hose Company, as authorized by the State of Delaware Fire Commission, is authorized to have 3 fire policemen. However, I think at this point in time, the fire chief chooses to use those 3 people who might be fire policemen as firefighters instead of having them sitting in the street with blue lights flashing. They do have an option where they use fire police from the other neighboring communities. A matter of fact, if the call goes out for fire policemen from Cheswold, Hartley, Lipsick, Little Creek, even Felton, they come a run into Dover to relieve our Dover police officers on the fire scene. So I think that the fire chief has his organization and his operation set up to the best of the ability to serve the citizens of Dover, and I have not heard him or discussed with him about fire police coming into being.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Mr. Gaudioso.
Really, there's not much I can even add to that. I think everything that's been said or needs to be said has been said. One of the things that impressed me when I moved here, and I have to go along with what Councilwoman Williams said, Dover really should be very thankful and very proud of the fire department. It saves every taxpayer in this room and every taxpayer in this city a heck of a lot of money. And surprisingly, a lot of people never even think about it. They really deserve a lot of credit, more so than what we actually give them. As far as what Mayor Christensen said, absolutely, he's an authority on that. You can't dispute that. So I'd have to go along with what others said. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gaudioso. Going to our 3rd district now, Mr. Cole.
One of the things I've learned is sometimes you can talk too much. This hasn't been an issue when I've been walking around and talking to people, and like has been repeated, Mr. Christensen and others have a lot more knowledge and authority on this, and so that's what I kind of done on that.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Councilman Bonar.
Thank you, Alan. I'm not going to talk a lot about this because I think that the 3 fire police positions that are authorized within the Robbins Hose Company, of which I'm a life member, could be activated, but it's been the decision by the fire company and it isn't needed because the cooperation they get from mutual aid fire companies and the Dover Police Department. It's important for you to remember that fire policemen are utilized just for traffic control. And so don't confuse that with law enforcement.
Thank you, Councilman Bonar. Our next question has to do with economic development and the grant from the state. 2 questions dealing with the same topic. The governor has just given the city a gift of $7 million for development west of the city. I believe this is the gift that keeps on taking and serves mostly local investors, and I'm anxious to hear your thoughts. And the other part of that question, or the second question dealing with the same topic, with new downtown development funds from the state, how will the city double down and coordinate development efforts, and what will the accountabilities be to the public for overall progress? Why don't we start with our mayoral candidates on this one, and we'll start out with Mr. Gaudioso.
Well, as far as the downtown Dover development, I attended the workshop that the Economic Development Department put on. And I'll tell you, I was very impressed. And I was impressed by the fact that there were a number of people there. I've already said that anyone who wants to make an investment in the city of Dover, this is a dynamite opportunity. You have a situation where the state is going to kick in 20% up to, what is it? I think it's $250,000, right? Yeah. 20% up to $250,000. The Kent County is going to kick in another 10% on top of that. And then on top of that, you have the city of Dover waiving all kinds of fees and giving tax exemption. It's a dynamite deal. I don't see why people are even concerned about it. It is a plus for the city, period. Done.
Thank you, Mr. Gaudioso. Mayor Christensen.
With the designation of the Downtown Development District by the state of Delaware on January the 11th, we don't get $7 million. We get a portion of it. And up to $250,000 can be given back to any entrepreneur that would like to locate in the downtown area. This is being governed not by local folks, so there is little or no opportunity for anybody to abscond with or make off with any of the funds for bogus projects because it's managed through the Delaware State Housing Authority. Once again, I'd like to point out to a partnership that came about, another partnership that came about as we were designated as a downtown area was with Kent County, where they're offering up to $10,000 for projects that are going to be located downtown. And as I said before, a healthy downtown is like a healthy heart and a body. The entire city benefits.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. Moving out to our 3rd district, we'll start out with Mr. Anderson.
They keep choosing me first, sorry. As far as, development of downtown Dover and the investors coming in, it's a two-way street, honestly. You have, development that needs to be done, but you have people that want to build it, but then we can't not accept those funds, or we can't say no when we want these things actually done. So what we have to do is just have more transparency, as the big word for tonight, but literally have more involvement with our cities and our residents to make sure the stuff that's being developed is stuff that we want. And I think that's the biggest thing, because I don't want to build, these big infrastructures and buildings and businesses, and no one's really coming downtown to visit these locations. So my biggest thing is to make sure it's a better quality life for the 3rd District and the city of Dover. Bring stuff downtown that we want to come visit and partake in.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Neal.
Renaissance of Baltimore, Inner Harbor, requires 1, places for people to live so they can walk to businesses that they would like to come to. In order to attract that, you have to have police, you have to have lighting, and you have to have parking. If we have that, the media is going to be reporting on it. I know they're going to be reporting on it, and there's your transparency. I think what we may need is another planner that we lost during the recession to help the process so that we look like we're acting very smoothly in integrating these people in. We've got some very good people in the planning department, and they can help, but they're going to need some help because we have stripped them of some talent.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Moving to our other 3rd District candidates, we'll start out with Councilman Bonar.
I think the downtown development project is probably one of the best things that's ever happened to the city. I don't know how many of you sitting in this room remember Dover when it was vibrant and alive, but I do. Because of the advent of the malls, of course, people decided to move out. The stores decided to move to the malls. Well, now that's reversing. That trend is reversing. And we must, if we are going to be successful as a city, attract businesses and attract people who want to live and work and recreate downtown. We have a library. We have a wonderful riverfront area that's going to be developed over the next several years along the St. John's River. Those things are going to happen, and if you build it, they will come. You look at Chestertown, you look at even Denton and Cambridge and Oxford and the other communities on the Eastern Shore. They have a vibrant downtown, and it's because they worked to get it there.
Thank you, Councilman Bonard. Mr. Cole.
Again, the downtown, it's great to think about, but until people feel like my in-laws have lived here since the mid-50s, my wife and her friends like to go to 33 West and things like that, but until people feel like there's adequate parking, adequate lighting, feel good going down there in the evenings, until we have that, downtown, it sounds great, but people will not safe. People wanting to come downtown, to come to businesses, to come downtown, to come to businesses and live downtown. And then everything will follow after that.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Moving to the 1st District, Councilwoman Williams.
I think it's one of the best things that's happened to Dover, and not coincidentally, but concurrently with the efforts by Kent County and the state of Delaware to help out our downtown district, we now have walking patrols from the police department. All of this is converging, and this is going to be probably one of the best efforts that we've had in the last 25 years. So we need to jump on this and keep this ball rolling, because this is a great deal for people who want to put a business downtown. It's not going to get much better than this.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. Mr. Hosfeld.
Thank you. I attended the Downtown Dover Merchants meeting when this was initially discussed, and I can't tell you how excited they were to hear about this and hear about the opportunities. I was excited for them. The important thing to remember when we think downtown, we always think of Lockerman Street. There's more to downtown Dover than just Lockerman Street. We got to remember all the side streets. We got to remember whether it be Division Street, Governor's Avenue, New Street, Queen Street. We have to remember everything else downtown. That's where the other part of this comes in with the, it was the Restoring Central Dover. I was one of the original members on the steering committee for that program. We received a $75,000 grant from Wells Fargo. I honestly believe there's more money to come from Wells Fargo if we keep this up. But again, there we got two programs working together, and I couldn't agree more with the other people that have said it. A vibrant downtown is going to help us go a long way in drawing those businesses and those employers that we want. And again, but we have to remember there's more to downtown than just Lockerman Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Moving to our 4th District candidates, we'll start out with Mr. Dixon.
Yes, downtown is important to us. I'm on the committee for downtown. I'm there to work along with them to make decisions on helping us keep this program alive. We need it to help our city, and that's what I'm thinking, that we as a community want our downtown to be alive and well, and where people can come to live, and we can be proud of the downtown area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Sudler.
I think that the funds available through the state attorney's settlement creates great incentives for the residents of Dover to get assistance for affordable housing. Also, we need to make sure our city council representatives make their constituents aware of public forums that allow them to gain access to these funds that are available today for infrastructure improvement and for our local residents, for jobs to our local residents.
Thank you, Mr. Sudler. Mr. Roach.
I really feel as though this is a great opportunity for outside entities to be able to come in and make Dover better. Anytime you bring people in and make it more attractive, obviously it's going to be a great thing for our city. But one of the things I want to make sure is that we tread softly in regards to how we do this, because we don't want to push people out, because once they're gone, like he said, there's other side streets other than Lockerman. I don't want it to get to a point where it's difficult for people to sustain these businesses and they close down because of the accessibility, the lack of parking, how far you got to go. So I think that we just really need to focus and look from the outside in to what is going to be most beneficial for this money and the people coming in, and that these businesses will be able to thrive. I really am excited because, like I said, being here my entire life, I've never heard of opportunities in regards to incentives as far as home buyers, but we just need to make sure that everything is done, is open to the public, we make them aware of the opportunities that are presented to them, and we do whatever is best to make our city be better and continue to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. I'm going to beg your deal with crime in the city of Dover. And since 3 people, and actually a 4th question that is connected that deals with the quality of life. And if it's all right with the audience and the candidates, I would like to make that our last question so you have the opportunity to answer it. All right, hearing no objections, I will go right ahead. With all of the drug selling in Dover, what will you do as a council person to eliminate the drug dealing and selling? Second part of that question. Delaware leads the country in teen sexualized experiences, drug use, and suicide. What programs can you offer to help improve those numbers within the community that includes all teens? And then there is just one card that just says crime with a big question mark. So I'm assuming that falls under that category. And related to it, and as we talked about in our last question, how does this relate to the quality of life that we have been talking about in the city of Dover? And those are the 4 questions that I'd like you to deal with. And we will start out with the 3rd District, and we'll start out with Councilman Bonar.
We're never going to solve the crime problem and the drug problem in the city of Dover or anywhere else in this state until we start holding parents and children accountable. People who allow their children to walk out on the street, get involved in these various nefarious activities, need to be held accountable. It's a societal issue. We need to work with families as a city. We need to teach people how to budget their funding to make sure they keep a roof and keep their rent paid and their utility and clean environment in which to live. But until there is a cultural change in our nation and our city and our state, it's not going to happen unless we continue to bring all of the religious leaders into the programs and all of the community leaders into the programs and work as a team to solve a problem. But it's probably in reality a 2-generation or 3-generation effort. It doesn't happen overnight.
Thank you, Councilman Bonar. Mr. Cole.
This is a multi-layered approach. I mean, to have 2 minutes to answer this kind of question, this is being a teacher for again, it's grassroots approach, just like Councilman Bonar said. I mean, you need to get religious leaders and the police and the fire department and everybody to buy into the communities and get out there. We need mentoring programs or more mentoring programs. We need people to just kind of get in there and like President Obama has you volunteer for a day or whatever. I mean, we need to have that in the city where people just take pride in their city, and then their cultural change will come about. But we need to have supports in place, and we can't just keep saying it's on the parents. We need to provide the parents with support in that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. 4th District, we'll start out with Mr. Dixon.
I go along with the first speaker because I've been here for 30-odd years. And the areas that I've worked in as a volunteer, personally talking to parents, personally talking to young people of why they do this, or why they come in. We tried a few years ago to have a curfew for young people. It failed because we didn't want it. So that is where we are now. 15 years later, we're still at that point. So we need to work with it even more so. We're dealing with human beings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Mr. Roach.
I honestly feel as though that to address this issue, we need to build on our relationships. We have moved so far away from the idea that we uplift children. Because to be 110% honest with you, when I decided to run for city council, people told me I shouldn't. They told me to drop out. They told me it's not your time. They told me you're not old enough to be able to make a change and affect change. But these are the exact statements that are being made by the older individuals in our community, and exactly the reason why our children do not believe in us. We have to make them feel as though that we care about them, and that's what I will do, which I've always done. I promise you that the one thing you will never have to question is my integrity, my transparency, and the fact that I will always do whatever I can in regards to dealing with these kids. That's where it starts, because it has to be dealt with relationships. We have to go back to the days where everybody cared about everybody, and everybody is doing what they can do for the kid next door, the kid to the other side. We can't continue to move in a situation where we discourage our kids and then blame them for choosing negative influences to latch on to in regards to what they want to do. You can't do it. It's impossible. Give them a chance.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. Mr. Sudler.
Whenever you have criminal enterprises and teen sexual activity that is not desirable in the city of Dover, I think that you should focus on additional family support programs and additional parks and recreation activities that will help curb the delinquent behavior from our youth. In addition, we need robust penalties for criminal offenders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sudler. Moving on to our candidates for First District, we'll start out with Mr. Hosfeld.
It's probably no surprise to you, we're never going to stop drug selling in our community, throughout the nation and our state. We have to deal with it. How we do that, we have to look forward. We have to see what's coming down the road in the future. In 2011, I asked for 10 officers. We didn't get them then. And all of a sudden, we get them. We had the same issues back then. Police officers do what they have always done for 100 years. We arrest the bad guys. We can't deal. We have 93 officers in the city of Dover, and we have a population of 38,000. 93 officers can't deal with society's issues. We just deal with the problems that come from it. And that's the unfortunate part, and that's why we're seen, that's why police are seen as the bad guy a lot of times. Our quality of life issues can change, but it's going to take the fact that neighborhoods and communities have to engage with the police. They have to help the police. They have to be willing to talk to the police going forward. This is how we make changes in our community, especially in light of the low number of police officers that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Hosfeld. Councilwoman Williams.
Through a grant from the Criminal Justice Council and in cooperation with the City of Dover, the organization I work for, Aid in Dover, that runs the shelter, started a program called Hot Shots last year. Hot Shots was funded for 35 kids. 233 came on Friday and Saturday nights and played basketball. Now we're working, Mr. Bonar and I are working on a deal with Calpine that we may be able to get a building so that we can build a gym for these kids on the east side where the Parks and Recreation building used to be. And we're working with the Criminal Justice Council to get a PAL program down here. We need to have not only community policing, not only community police enforcement, we've got to have volunteers and police people in the community working with our children so everybody starts to get to know everybody all over again. If we don't have that, we're not going to do anything. It's going to be like every other big city where nobody cares.
Thank you, Councilwoman Williams. Moving to our third district candidates, Mr. Neal.
A couple of weeks ago, I brought out the monkey suit, put it on. Everybody thought I was a waiter for a group who was honoring a football player from the New England Patriots. He played for the Delaware State University, who intercepted Joe Flacco, University of Delaware, playing for the Ravens, pass. Now, why am I saying this? Because I learned of this program for the first time through Ruben Salters, who hit me up for the ticket, and I came. I saw. I was amazed. They're getting kids into engineering, math, and the arts. I thought it was fantastic. We need 10 times that group because that's where it starts. It's a world problem. And that's the only way we're going to do anything about it for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Mr. Anderson.
Well, speaking on specifically the 3rd district, and that's the district that I live in, crime comes in different many facets, and it comes down to opportunity. What they said is the crime of opportunity. So if I don't have the proper resources to go get the job, my family still needs to eat. My child is not going to stop crying, while I'm trying to do what I need to do. Yes, crime is a big issue, and that's not the way to go. But if I can't get a job because of maybe a record of something that may have happened years ago, and just because of that one little mistake, now I really can't do anything more. In some places you can't even vote just because of that one little mistake. So there's something that needs to be changed on the underlying in order to make sure that these things don't continue to happen. And, thank you very much. I mean, like I said, my biggest thing, is a first chance program, which means your first chance is the first impression, which means you don't have that opportunity to make the wrong paths. You're going to have somebody more than just the police department, but the actual officials, the residents of the city, and people that are in these offices today that can do more mentoring than just the police. They have a busy enough schedule to worry about the city, then also to have to pile on, mentoring, pile on, babysitting, pile on, trying to break this up. There's a lot for them going on when I know that there's a lot of people in this room right now that can do exactly the same thing and have a bigger difference.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Finally, our mayoral candidates can weigh in on this question, and we'll start out with Mr. Gaudioso.
Okay. I taught for 38 years. I taught young teenagers, 7th and 8th graders. I've had students that went on to become criminals, believe me, big-time criminals. And I had students that went on who many people thought would not succeed, but they did. And a lot of times people would ask, how did they do it? And the answer to that is somebody took an interest in them. The problem is, yes, there is a problem in the home. I won't deny that at all. But many of these kids simply need someone to say, you can succeed. There is an alternative for you. I had a student who really had major problems. I went to, I'll get to this real quick. I went to child study team, a woman I knew on it, and I had a good relationship with them. They got him into a special program. He had to make a decision. Do I go in that program or not go in that program? I wrote him, just let me finish one, bear with me. I wrote him a little note. It was just literally a note. And I mailed it to his house. And his mother made sure he got it. He read it. He held on to that note. And basically what I told him is, look, life is not fair. You're dealt a deck of cards, you're dealt a hand. You've got to deal with what's in that hand. Make the best that you can. It's as simple as that. People have to understand you have to give people the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Gaudioso. Mayor Christensen.
Thank you, Ellen. How do we deal with the heroin epidemic in Dover, in Kent County, state of Delaware, and the United States? Let's show the same outrage to the heroin epidemic that we showed to our favorite sports team's loss 2 weeks ago. Or who was voted off Dancing with the Stars Monday night. People pay more attention to the garbage that's on television than to the issues that are happening right in their own neighborhood. They're going to open the door one day after they've been watching these mindless TV shows, and they're going to say, what happened to my world? And your world's going to be gone because you didn't pay attention. How to deal with the heroin issues and the crime issues in the city of Dover? Community policing. Get out of the cars, know the people that belong in those neighborhoods, invoke a trust with them and an understanding, and let them know that you're there to help them. Ms. Bev made mention of the Police Athletic League. You work with young people, also developing a trust with them. And the bottom line on it is, in your community, remember, it's not my police department, it's our police department. So cooperate whenever you can.
Thank you, Mayor Christensen. We will now close the formal part of tonight's program. I would like to thank both the audience and the candidates for your enthusiastic participation this evening. Just remember that you can access the video of this debate online by going to the City of Dover website and clicking on Public Announcements and the link to catch it live. Please note that campaign literature is available at the rear of the auditorium. And most importantly, please remember to vote on Tuesday, April 21st. Thank you all, and good night.